has been called Canada's best kept secret, who, by the way, has won 2 Juno Awards and sold over 300,000 albums. Steve Bell, welcome to Full Circle.
Oh, it's good to be here. Thank you.
So good to have you.
Secret anymore.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh, I know. I get out there.
Yeah, I think so. 300,000.
And not only 300,000, but he got a shout out from Bruce Cockburn, who I know both Steve and I enjoy listening to.
Yeah.
The manager saying that the cover that you did was the best to date of any Bruce Cockburn song.
Although that was 15 years ago.
Don't say that. I'm saying to date. But that's a big accomplishment in one of your albums that you got the Juno. Was that from
That
one
was
of the Juno?
yeah. That was Romantics and Mystics, 1997. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Bruce Cockburn cover songs.
no. That
no.
that
That
one song.
That's
on
right.
that album, I did later an album of
That's
Bruce
right.
Cockburn cover
You were
songs.
hoping he would say it again. And
No, not a word. Not a word.
And you came for dinner.
You know what,
I actually
though?
called the album My Dinner with Bruce, and it never happened. He never called.
Oh, man. You know what, though? You have been called a storyteller, a man who sings honest songs and tells honest stories. Is that about right?
I guess so. I try to, the best as possible. Every once in a while, you find yourself, yes.
It is.
Yes, it is true. Yeah.
I really appreciate about you, that you don't want to just be like called a Christian music artist. You are a Christian, but you're an artist, and your faith comes out through music because that's who you are.
Yeah.
But you're more about telling stories of life.
Yeah. I find that I don't really care if anybody knows I'm a Christian. Of course I'm a Christian. You can't go to my concert and not know that. I mean, it's where I'm coming from. But I tell those stories, actually not because I feel like I have even an agenda. It's just the truth of my life. It's who I am. Right. So and it's because of what I read and how I spend my time that my songs come out this way. When you pray or when you invest in scriptures or let them invest in you, probably is the best way you should say it. That's bound to come out. But as an artist, the idea of Christian artist, I think why I don't like it is it's sort of like, it almost gives a qualifier that has got nothing to do with if it's any good or not. Do you know what I mean? So people that are Christians will listen to you because you're Christian. And people that aren't Christians won't listen to you because you're Christian. Yeah. I'd rather be known as a good or bad artist.
That just happens to be a Christian.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's a small distinction.
Basically.
It's a ghettoization, no, they don't call, I'm not sure what he is, but they don't say, secular humanist Bryan Adams. Do you know what I mean? Or whatever he is. But every artist has a worldview. And every artist has a faith. It may not be Christian faith. It may not be in God. I mean, it could be a faith that God doesn't exist. But these are improvable things, so they're faiths.
And Steve, I love that your goal in life is for excellence and honesty.
Yeah.
That's really neat because for me, I'm like, would that be like my goal? But I can see how that can kind of encompass everything in your life.
Oh yeah, how you speak to your spouse, how you treat your children, how you mow the lawn, how you neighbor somebody. You realize that we really do constitute everybody around us. Like none of us we're the North American idea that we're this sort of this automaton individuals is bizarre because I'm a dad because I got kids. They dad me. I'm a husband because my wife husbands me. I'm a neighbor because my neighbors. I'm constituted. Everything that's important to me is constituted by someone else. And then I realized that I also then constitute other people. Right? By the quality of neighbor I actually create to some degree who that other person is. And that's what matters, that we do these things excellent. We need to be great neighbors and great husbands and wives and parents and siblings and children.
And I think the calling is even greater for us as people of faith because sometimes, I've just seen it happen where it's like, well, God loves you, so it's okay. You don't really have to be that good.
You can be mediocre.
You know what I mean?
But the goodness should come not out of, you don't want this to get reduced to moralisms or something, but at the same time I think the reason why we pursue excellence is for love. Yes, God has forgiven us. Yes, we've got our access to heaven in the final days, or what, all those kind of things are all those kind of good. But in the meantime, God is a communion of love in God's very self. There was love before there was us.
Yeah.
Like God didn't create because God was lonely.
Right.
That has never been. God has been fully satiated in love from all eternity. So we're not meeting a need of God in any way, shape, or form. We're just overflow. Do you know what I mean?
I like
there's some,
yeah.
Years ago, I met this young woman and she was in a lockup situation. She had been, not because she was a criminal, but because she was unsafe to herself. And she cut a lot. And I remember looking at the arms and my friend, she had all these lines up her arm. And my friend asked her, he said, why do you do it? Because clearly you're not trying to kill yourself. Because, you've got, like, she had 150 little And she says, I've got all this pain in here, and I don't know how to deal with it. This is a 14-year-old kid. And she says, but I can focus it there. And when it comes out in blood, she says, I can see it, I can touch it, I can smear it, I can taste it, I can deal with it there, I can't deal with it here. And I remember how, it's a sad story, but I remember as a songwriter, I'm thinking, that's what my songs are. Like, you're externalizing yourself as a songwriter. You've got joys or sorrows or any percolating in your soul, and you can't keep it there. The artistic impulse is to externalize. So you put it out in a song or a quilt or whatever, and I think that's creation. I think
you
God.
said quilt?
A song or quilt or a dance or
Okay,
quilt.
quilt.
Yeah, that's kind of random, isn't it? Sorry.
You know, your quilting bee on Tuesday nights.
I'm like, quilt, so?
Well, I know you quilt. So, but I really believe that I think we are God's externalization. I think a fever pitch of joy and love and fellowship got boiling in the Trinity, and God couldn't take it anymore. And bam, there's a walrus, and bam, there's a giraffe, and there's fish, and there's mountains, and there's, there's cavernous places, and there's, stars, and I honestly think that we're just absolute ecstasy overflow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so as a result, then we need to, I think, if we're going to reflect our Maker, then we need to do the same thing. We need to other each other with excellence.
You know, Steve, there's so much depth to not just your music, but even just all of this conversation. And I happen to know that your music actually began in a very surprising place. When you were 8 years old, you learned how to play the guitar in prison. So when we come back, Steve is going to tell us how he went to prison at 8 years old and what happened when he picked up a guitar. Don't go away.
Married or single, stay-at-home mom or CEO, all women were designed by God to be in relationship. Join the Sopa Sisters this fall as Full Circle presents an exciting one-day women's conference to celebrate vibrant relationships with God, family, and community. Featured guests include best-selling authors and marriage experts Bill and Pam Farrell.
So I'm not intimidated by the couch.
With worship and music by award-winning Canadian favorite Steve Bell. Complete the circle by joining Anne Main, Cheryl Weber, and Melinda Estabrooks for a beautiful time of coming together, connecting with one another to know God intimately, share courageously, and live authentically. Conference is coming to Oakville October 15th at the Meeting House, London November 12th at LGT Family Church, and Barrie November 19th at Mapleview Community Church. Visit FullCircleTV.com for ticket pricing, group rates, download a poster and video for your church, and invite your friends.
Let's go back to prison.
Then we come back
Take
to
us back to
bars.
prison,
Wow,
Steve.
Well,
Steve.
my dad was the Protestant chaplain at Drumheller Prison when I was a little boy, and the inmates there. So, and that's where we went to church every Sunday. Was in prison. So that was our main experience of church. We did go to sort of street churches as well, but our main sort of home church was always in prison. So. And then in Drumheller, the inmates asked Dad if they could use the chapel on Saturday afternoons to have jam sessions. He said sure. So every Saturday he'd go and he'd open up, and I'd always ask if I could come along, because I loved it. And these guys, some of them were great players. Some, Chet Atkins, kind of, country, a lot of country, but
Talented.
fine players. And they just sit in a circle for 2 or 3 hours and play. And I was dying to play, and when the inmates heard about it, they actually approached my dad and they said, "Why don't you, leave Steve with us? We'll teach him stuff."
Stop. And your dad's like, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
But every Saturday from 8, and then we moved to Stony Mountain when I was 12, and the tradition kind of still happened there. So it was basically the inmates, that prison inmates. I mean, I like to say, and we talked about this earlier, that the reason why I travel the world right now and sing and tell my stories is because Canada's most unwanted men invested in me when I was 8 years old.
And what I love about your career, it's so full. So you learn in prison by these, most wanted men in Canada. Yeah. Your mom has great influence because she was a piano player and she actually played guitar as well.
She played guitar. Yeah.
And then you're playing in bars for 10 years.
Played in bars for 10 years.
In Winnipeg. I mean, this is some great storytelling.
I got lots of stories.
You got lots of stories, I would like to say, right? Lots of
The first
depth.
time you played in a bar, did you say someone was shot dead or killed?
No. The first time I played in a country bar.
Okay.
A person leaving the door at midnight walked out there. We'd heard this bang, and there was somebody waiting with a sawed-off shotgun, killed him right on the spot.
Wow.
So that was a big day.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So your life is all full of these things, and so there's, a lot of experiences, and then all of a sudden you were called out of it, and I think that's a really interesting
what
part
happened,
of your story.
Well, it was after 10 years in the clubs, and I mean, it wasn't going anywhere. Club life is like, it's a tough life, because back then you're playing 6 nights a week. you know, weekend, and Sundays you change from club to club, you know. So it was really a 7-day-a-week job. And it's always late at night. So by this time I had family, kids, three little children, and it was starting to wear thin, you know. And but of course, at this point, I'm early 30s. I have no other skills. I'm completely unemployable if I can't do this. And so it was a real panic. You know, what do I do? I didn't know what to do. But this one particular night, I'm lying in bed, and I don't know how to describe this. I don't always have the right language for it. But it's all of a sudden the room was just filled with presence. It was, you know, and I didn't hear God speak in my ear. It was more like a heat in the chest. I don't know how to describe it. If you haven't had it, you know, but. And the voice said to me that this time of life was over. There's something else I want you to do, and that was it. So I thought I was hanging up my guitars. I didn't like. It didn't say you're going to go into a music career, and I had no intention. I didn't want to do Christian music. I didn't like Christian music. I didn't listen to it. All the sort of music ministries that used to come through our town when I was a kid were things I just didn't want to. I thought I don't want to do that, you know. So I hung up my guitars. My wife went back to work full-time. She's a teacher, and I stayed home with the kids. And it was that year that scriptures just absolutely came alive for me. I don't know how else to describe this, but I remember one day sort of picking up in the Psalms. It's like all of a sudden this book was like a baby. I almost dropped it, like it was alive. And songs started to come. Almost every time especially the Psalms, I'd open up a song, I would read a couple lines and melody would start forming, and bang, song after song after song.
And what I love about your songs is they are so deep. They speak to the deepest part of you. Some of your songs I just play over and over, and I'm just crying because they just are so personal to the individual listener.
Well, you know what? But a lot of them, the lyrics are coming from ancient texts, whether it's scriptures or poetry. But the reason why I chose them is because they're connected to my personal life. So when you hear one of my renditions of, say, Psalm 23, you're not going to hear the story behind, but you're going to hear. You're going to hear the importance for it in my life. It's you know what I mean. So you're going to feel.
The emotion.
You're going to feel the you know, it's like an iceberg. You see the top smallest portion of it, but there's something huge underneath. And so when songwriters really when they use text because their lives were deeply connected to it, other people feel it, and it helps them enter, I think.
Yeah.
And one of the coolest things, I think, with your career and the way that it's taken is how you've got to play with so many symphony orchestras, including Nashville Symphony Orchestra at Opryland, which is so cool, and you know, Edmonton, Winnipeg. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it started, it's about 5 years ago, I think now, we got a call from the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra saying, would Steve do a concert with us? And it's like, have they heard my music? I mean, they're a very secular organization, you know, and so I thought, well, they must want me to sing a pops concert, because they always do these pops concerts, and maybe they want me to do 70 songs or something. And so I said,
Bruce Coburn songs.
or Bruce Coburn songs, yeah. And so we kind of phoned back and said, you know, thank you, really honored, but you know, I kind of know what I do, and I you know, it'd be a big thing, and it's kind of off track for me, you know. But it'd be fun, but thank you. They said, no, we want it to be a Steve Bell concert. And then I said, have you heard my music? You know, and they said yes, and apparently it came up from the orchestra. They said, who would you like to do a concert with? And it was the orchestra members said we should do one to Steve Bell.
Wow.
So we got Mike Jansen, you know Mike?
Yes.
You know, Toronto musician.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Jazz festivals.
Yes,
That's
actually,
great.
in the early days, Mike taught my kids piano.
Oh, did he? Yes,
Yes,
yeah. He is, I think he will be a legendary Canadian musician. I think he could be the next Oscar Peterson or something. But he did the scores and came and we put a band together and we did this concert in Winnipeg, and it was unbelievable. It was just a huge downpouring of presence of God in this building.
That's so cool.
And you're doing one, and you're doing one soon, right? I mean, it's
my next one is Massey Hall, December 3rd, with the Toronto Symphony.
Toronto. So if you're in Toronto, you got to come hear it.
Yeah.
So you're with the Full Circle Girls, and then you're at Massey Hall.
Steve, did you ever imagine that God would bring you to this place? Because that's massive. Like Juno Symphony, you know, 1,500 concerts, 15 CDs, 300,000 copies sold. Like that's huge.
I know. It's really wonderful. And no, I didn't imagine this. I kind of hoped that I could just not go broke, you know. And it's not like you make a lot of money in this organization. But my dad, when I first started doing music, and I said to Dad, I feel this calling. My dad's a preacher, and I said, how big should this get? How much should I push it? And he says, do whatever you want. He just says, but remember, if you build it, you maintain it. If God builds it, God maintains it. One's a lot easier than the other. You know. And so we haven't really been pushy with it. It's kind of, when I say
organic.
it's been fairly organic. It's kind of grown.
So you're in Massey Hall in December, but before that, you're at the Full Circle Women's Conferences in October
that'll
and
be
November.
fun. Yeah.
I think we have the information.
We
We'll
do.
have it come up on the screen one more time. If you want to attend one of the Full Circle Vibrant Relationships Conferences with Steve Bell as our music, there's the information. Oakville, London, and Barrie. FullCircleTV.com is where you can find out the information, where you can get tickets.